All right, so the numbers are down in Alberta and down in pretty much every other province. Ontario and Quebec, the numbers are pretty much steady. And again, it's the same thing I've been pointing out for a while now. Still no indication that the whole mandatory mask garbage has done anything to slow the spread or the cases. If it did, it should have did it already. We should see numbers, in the low hundreds in Ontario, maybe even below 100, which we haven't seen yet. We should see numbers below 100 in Quebec, which we haven't seen yet. Now, I don't know exactly the whole mask laws in Quebec. I know some cities have them, but the one thing about Toronto, or not Toronto, but the thing about Ontario is Toronto has them, which is the biggest city. So that should have an effect. And this, like, it's the prediction I made, and I would be very surprised if they're not talking about it, is that there's a pretty clear trend that the cases are going to, at least I may be wrong, but there's a looking like there's going to be a trend where the cases are going to go down over the next month or two. And what's going to happen is the media is going to be like, oh, you see, it's because of the masks, even though there's no evidence of that. If there was, it would have happened already. Again, so that's something I wanted to point out, that watch out for the mainstream media. They'll be talking about that, I'm sure. There will be a second wave at some point. That's inevitable. Will it be anything we have to worry about? That's highly unlikely. The problem is that um, they'll still try and lock down, or at the very least, they're going to try increasing the whole mandatory mask garbage. Who knows what they'll come up with 2, 3, 4 months down the road, because 3, 4 months ago, you were considered crazy if you wore a mask. So who knows what they're going to come up with. But anyway, um, Alberta had just 80 cases yesterday. The active cases are down. The hospitalizations are steady. Um, Ontario actually had their numbers go down today, so that's very good for them. But again, it's already been well over 3 weeks for Ontario. So if there was a link between the mask stuff and reducing the reduction of cases, it should have happened last week, not this week. So, I do think that there is a little bit of a link. That there definitely is literally no link, at least from the science I've seen. The problem is that um, the difference is rather negligible. It's rather negligible. I guess that's the best way of putting it. So, that is the numbers out of Canada. Again, BC apparently has had some outbreaks, but again, their cases haven't gone up that much either. The numbers out of the states were up. Were actually, they're pretty much steady, but the death numbers were up yesterday. But again, it is one day. The last few days before that, they were down. So it is just one day. You kind of have to wait a little bit till you see a trend. And again, the one thing you have to look out for the numbers out of the states is that I think they're even more manipulated than the numbers out of Canada. So anyway, the big news out of yesterday was the whole we thing with the Kielburger brothers. They were kind of being grilled, rightfully so. Um, and this is from Kian Bext, and he says the Kielburger brothers just confirmed that they only started sending money to Justin Trudeau's mother after he became prime minister. Again, this is just confirming that there is shady stuff going on here, and that there's I mean, for starters, it's textbook conflict of interest. And the other thing too is that is this not fraud? Is this not embezzlement? Like, again, I'm not a lawyer, I'm not a judge, but to me, funneling money to your family members and using your position of power to do that, there's got to be something illegal when it comes to that. So again, I'm not a lawyer. I don't know exactly what it is, but there's no way that that's legal. There's no way that that's legal. So again, is anything going to become of it? Absolutely not. Again, I've already seen, CBC. You see Rosie Barton and all those idiots already, doing, they spend all day running cover. They never question it whatsoever, and the ignorant sheep, they just soak it up like, like a sponge. And again, like I say, nothing's going to come of it. Justin Trudeau could kill someone on live TV, and I don't think it would change much. As far as, again, he is down in the polls. He is down in the polls, but I still think he would win on. I still think he has enough to win an election, if it were held tomorrow. Again, the problem is the Conservatives have no leader. Um, and I've heard a lot of stuff talking about how McKay's still leading somehow. I don't understand, like, who supports McKay. Like, I've never seen anyone who supports McKay, but again, apparently he's still leading. Maybe it's just because he's from the East, all the people from the East are supporting him, but I haven't seen one person who I follow on social media, or one person who I've talked to in public, or even anyone who's talked to anyone, even we're playing telephone here. I still don't know anyone who supports McKay. So again, I've heard people that have supported any of the other candidates, but not McKay. So again, I don't know where that is. And the other thing too is that if McKay gets in, I firmly believe he's the weakest candidate, because he's the most to the left, which means anybody who's actually a conservative, again, you probably would lose even more of the vote, because I don't know just how far to the left he is. Um, but again, the fact that he's clearly pandering to the left in a leadership debate, not a debate, but a leadership race, just shows that if anything, he's going to go even further to the left in a general, which basically makes him a liberal from like 10 to 20 years ago. Like he literally could have ran as a liberal, against Stephen Harper in whatever it was, '07 or something. And I don't think anyone would have been able to tell the difference. So that's something to point out there. But anyway, when it goes to Justin Trudeau again, like I don't think anything's going to come out of this. And it's sad the fact that he can, not only have ethics violations, but literally break the law, like literally break the law, and yet nobody cares. And nobody cares because of whataboutism. And it's like I said constantly, is that there is a stark difference in that the left, especially when you're in Alberta, they'll constantly point out, oh, well, Jason Kenney giving money to his oil buddies and all that, and which honestly is overstated, especially from the far left. But is Jason Kenney doing some shady stuff behind closed doors? If I had to bet money on it, absolutely. But what is the difference between someone like me and the average actual conservative voter and the average leftist voter? Is that the left wants to give the government more power, and the people on the right want to give the government less power. And when the government has less power, there is less room to do that kind of crony capitalist stuff that both sides do. Which is what, like I said, exactly why I don't take the left seriously. They can complain all they want about Jason Kenney, but I could care less, because their solution is just to give the government more power, which just opens up the door even more for that kind of corruption. Not only that, they want to massively jack up taxes and all that kind of stuff. So again, like, of course the problem's just going to get worse. And like I say, to the left, the left gives, like I say, Justin Trudeau, hundreds of thousands of dollars have been given to his family members. Hundreds of millions given to a charity that's run by his friends. I mean, you look at the NDP in Alberta. They hired what 10,000 public sector employees. The unions were just raking it in. Like, of course they do the exact same thing. Like, you're absolutely insane to suggest anything different. This is from Bill Mitchell. And he says, was just talking to a guy in the elevator in my building. He says his wife is a nurse in a hospital in Jacksonville. She says it's a ghost town. It's all lies, folks. And again, why I wanted to bring this up is for two reasons. Number one, I was talking to someone yesterday who was a nurse in a hospital in Edmonton, not the one that was overflowed or whatever. A different one of the other big ones, and they said it's actually pretty quiet. And which again just confirms everything I've been saying, everything that they've been saying too, is that in Alberta everyone's panicking, but the reality is that it's nothing we need to be worried about. Like, I really really don't get it. I really don't get it why I mean, I do get it. People are just so susceptible to propaganda, they'll believe whatever they're told, but it's hurting people, and it's not getting anyone anywhere either. It's hurting the economy, and it's hurting people's mental well-being, because you have tons of people out there who think that there's a doomsday virus going around, when the reality is that it's pretty much the same as the flu. It's a little more contagious, but the death rate's actually lower for anyone under 50. So again, um it's just insane to be overly worried. Again, I don't, again, like I said, I have plenty of family members who I've talked to that know people who work in hospitals too. And I've never heard anyone talk about one that's overloaded or anything. I mean, there is the one in Edmonton, but that's literally the one. Like, I've literally heard of probably at least 10 people that either directly work or know people, family members that know people, or friends of family members, or friends of people I know. And I've never heard one. I've never heard one person say that they were overloaded or, overworked or any of that kind of stuff. It's pretty much, going on as usual. So anyway, that's the another thing I wanted to bring up because again, the media is lying. Like the numbers are inflated to begin with. I mean, the numbers are clearly inflated, probably 10, 20%, maybe more, who knows. And not only that, too, is that a lot of people that are included in these case totals are people that have tested positive multiple times. That's another thing to keep in mind, too, that a lot of these are people that have tested positive multiple times. Not only that, too, a lot of the death numbers are people dying with COVID and not from it. Again, so that's another thing to keep in mind, too. So you really have to take the numbers with a grain of salt. This is from Tony TM or Tony whatever it is on Twitter. He says, not one doctor, not one news channel, not one person in authority over the last 5 months has told us how to naturally boost our immune systems. All they push are masks, social distancing, tests, and vaccines. Nothing about vitamins, healthy foods, or sunshine. The game is rigged. This is just more proof that there's clearly somewhat of a conspiracy going on. Again, what is it exactly? I don't know, and though I can make some pretty educated guesses, but again, the one thing that you do know that the authorities and the mainstream media, the mainstream politicians, with some exceptions, don't really care about the public's well-being. They don't care if, like I say, like this guy says, and he's definitely right about, is that if they did, they would be talking about, okay, what you can do to boost your immune system. That would be one of the biggest things that they would be talking about. But the fact that they're not talking about that just shows that they don't have the public's well-being in mind. Not only that, too. I mean, you look at the mainstream media. I mean, who's the biggest funder of the mainstream media? It's these big pharma companies. So of course they don't want. It's bad for business for people to fix their own stuff. So of course that they're not going to talk about that. Like the mainstream media has such a massive conflict of interest that it's not even funny. Like it's not even funny when it comes to this kind of stuff. And the last thing I wanted to talk about is global news layoffs. 70 staff laid off due to fall in revenue and inability to compete. Union in Global News expects to request government bailout. In other words, get woke, go broke. Let's pray to God that I mean, even though I'm not religious, but figure of speech, that they don't get any government money. I mean, the mainstream media is already getting way too much government money. Again, that's another thing that whenever these leftists complain about, government money being wasted, until you're worried about government money being wasted on the mainstream media, again, it's another way that I could care less. I don't care if they're wasting money on, cleaning up oil wells or whatever the left is talking about. I could care less because until you're worried about government money being wasted on the mainstream media, again, I could care less. Again, so that's the first thing I wanted to bring. I mean, I don't know exactly. I mean, one of the big things I think is that, a lot of old people are dying off from this virus. I mean, that is the one group of people that actually need to be worried about this, and that's probably played into it. That again, I mean, you look at, people under, 40 or so, like who watches the news? Like next to nobody. I mean, if you do, you're probably watching it because someone, a family member or friend that's older watches it. Like, again, I don't know anyone under 40 who watches the news. I mean, most people, despise the news. So again, it's something that's, just goes to show that I mean, the mainstream media is not going to be able to keep going because again, their viewership is overwhelmingly old people, and old people. Number one, they're naturally dying off in mass because they're old, and this virus thing is kind of kickstarting that. So again, I don't know how the mainstream media is gonna make a go of it going forward, because again, like within the next 10 to 20 years, like most of their viewership, at least their current viewership, is going to be gone. And I don't know how they're going to make it up. I think that the solution will be is if the government stays leftist in Canada, they'll just keep bailing them out no matter how much they need, because again, they always run cover. They're biased to the left. So that's probably what'll happen. But eventually, we're going to get to the point to where they're going to be given tens of billions of dollars a year to the mainstream media. But I mean, eventually, you'd think people would need to be pushing back. So we'll see as far as that goes. But again, it's good news. Like it's something you love to see. But again, it's the worst thing that if Justin Trudeau comes out next whenever and be like, yeah, we're going to increase the funding of the mainstream media. Like let's hope that doesn't happen. So anyway, that's the video for today. If you liked it, make sure to hit that like and subscribe if you haven't already. Check out my PayPal and email. I got linked in the description. Again, I appreciate any donations, but the very least, just hit that like and subscribe if you haven't already. And last few things, check me out on Twitter, Parlay, and BitChute. All those links are in the description, so you can find them all there.